Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, or whatever the time may be. Welcome to Coffee and a Book. Today, I am going to be reading from my book, Limousine Stories. This is the longest of all of my books, so I'm going to be reading it all week and maybe even into next week. We don't know yet, but yeah, we're going to find out because it's a long one and I don't like it. So I decided to pick one a little bit longer today or this week, so I can keep reading the whole week. Let me fix this real quick. There we go. Okay, good. So it's good to see everybody in here this morning. Let's go ahead and get started. And this is broken into sections and then chapters of each section. So that's how you know it's broken down. It's limousine stories. And I put the book title right here. That way you can see what it is. And if you're interested in purchasing them or yeah, or any of my other books, the link is in the description. And if you want signed copies, get a hold of me and we'll get you some. All right, introduction. My name is Lionel Richardson. I'm 39 years old and have been driving limousines professionally for 21 years. Most people would think that driving a limousine is a glamorous business because the drivers get to dress up, drive beautiful cars, and mingle with the rich and elite. In reality, the job sucks ass, but does have its perks every now and again. I graduated high school when I was 17 years old, not because I was smart, but because my birthday fell at a certain time of the year and I got to start school earlier than everybody else. I didn't know what to do with the rest of my life because I was a teenager and all I wanted to do was get laid, drive fast cars, and get laid in fast cars. I turned 18 a week after I graduated high school, and my father said I either had to start paying rent, go to college, or get a place of my own. I didn't really want to go to college just yet because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I decided that I would get a job. I tried the fast food scene, but I only lasted a few weeks because coming home smelling like frying grease wasn't my forte. I'm not one to work in a place where even the adults haven't grown up or grown into any potential. I also tried retail sales, but I didn't find anything exciting about helping someone find the perfect outfit for a date. I searched desperately for a job doing something I would love. I looked long and hard until one day it hit me. Literally. I was at a gas station getting gas and junk food when I stepped off the curb after paying for my purchase, and I was bumped by the opening door of a limousine. I was amazed at how beautiful the long, black, sleek, gleaming car looked. Excuse me. The elegance of its beauty stretched out before me made me want to climb in. I will be honest and say it wasn't only the elegance of the car that made me want to get in, it was also the young lady that bumped me with the door. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to hit you with the door. No worries. So you having fun tonight? Bachelorette party for my friend. I'm the only one who can't drink, so I get to chaperone 7 women so they don't do anything stupid. Sounds like you have your hands full. I think it might be an early night. Well, if it is, you can always give me a ring. I can keep you company, I said as I handed her my number. Might have to do that. With that, she she was ushered back into the car by the other ladies who were riding with her. She never called me, and I never saw her again. I did call the limo company the next day and inquired about a job. I was only 18 years old, and I had a license. What more could they want from me? I found out that I needed to get a chauffeur's license to drive for them, but other than that, I was qualified for the job. This was back when driving any vehicle that carried over 8 passengers, including the driver, required a high occupancy vehicle CDL. The law is now any vehicle over 16 passengers. I went down to the driver's license facility and asked how I could get a chauffeur's license. The man behind the counter looked me over and asked for my license. I handed it over and he looked up something on his computer. Says here you got your license when you were 16. To get a chauffeur's license, you only have to be driving for a year and you qualify. That'll be $5 for the chauffeur certification. I think back now and am amazed that I didn't have to take a test or any sort of any sort to get a chauffeur's license. I was so proud that I drove straight over to the limousine company and got myself a job. I was hired on the spot and was taken out for a test run the following day. By test run, I mean I had to drive to the airport to pick up some clients while my boss sat next to me. He had to explain where to park at the airport and where to stand with my little sign with the client's name on it. All of that was easy, but the challenge came when we arrived at the client's house. I had to back into the driveway. Backing a normal car isn't much of a challenge, but backing a limousine isn't as easy as you would think. A normal car has a small turning radius, but a limo's turning radius isn't that small and is exaggerated on top of that. There is also no pivot point to make things easier. Let's just say I nailed backing up the car on my first shot. My boss was impressed, and I was driving on my own the next day. I thought driving a limousine was going to be a glamorous job, but I was wrong indeed. Most of the driving I had to do was in and out of the airport. I was at the airport so often that most of the TSA officers knew me by name. The first long drive I got was for a business meeting. I had to drive 8 people around for the night. It started with me picking them up in front of the skyscraper in Midtown. I believe they were a group of lawyers, but I never did ask. They told me to drive around for a while so they could conduct business. After 2 hours, I was instructed to drop them in front of a restaurant and was to be back in 2 hours to pick them up. I found a place to park the car, and it was at that point when I realized that waiting around for people was extremely boring. I'm not going to mention how hungry one gets while sitting in a car for long hours at a time. The worst thing about sitting in a car waiting is trying to find a bathroom. Most places in the city request you to be a customer to use their bathroom. It didn't take long for me to learn to always carry a coffee cup with me when I drove for long periods of time. The beauty of driving a limo and waiting for clients is when I couldn't find a bathroom. I always had a coffee cup and the back of the really long car with dark tinted windows. I drove for my first limousine company for just under a year. My boss decided that he didn't want to pay the government taxes, and he also didn't want to divulge how much money he made in cash. The government didn't like this, and they seized everything he owned and threw him in jail. I had to find another job. None of the other local companies wanted to hire anyone associated with my last boss for some reason, so I decided to join the U.S. Army. I figured I could get a steady income and possibly get an education as well. I would also get a better job than driving a limousine. Whoops. Too far, Robert. After a week, my boss got arrested. A week after my boss got arrested, I went down to the local recruiter's office and signed myself up. After I passed all my tests and physicals, I was shipped off to basic training. It was there that I learned I was going to be assigned to a transportation unit. Usually a person gets to choose their career before they sign their life away for 4 years, but for some reason I was deprived of this option. Why is my chat acting up? There we go. I graduated from basic training and was shipped to another base for advanced individual training. It was here I learned how to drive a semi, Hummer, Jeep, and many other really big and fun vehicles. My training instructor found out about my limousine driving background and insisted that I take a special assignment training course. I didn't think anything of it, so I decided to do it. At the time, I didn't know that I would be assigned to drive high military officials and VIPs. Thankfully, I was turned down to drive the president, although I was given VIP evasive maneuver training. This meant that when in an escorted military convoy, I got to travel at high speeds, and I was trained how to escape and avoid dangerous situations. I also went through the same course the military police take to learn how to handle a vehicle at high speeds. In the 21 years of driving a limousine professionally, I encountered many situations. Some of these were good, others were bad, and some were just downright ugly. I will try to tell you some of these stories and not hold back anything. Excuse me. The unruly. The beating. There are many things a chauffeur has to endure while driving. We have to concentrate on the road, the conditions of the road, the weather, traffic, gawkers, tailgaters, where we are going, trying to maneuver a 25-foot car, usually longer, and the clients riding in the back. Sometimes this can be very stressful even when the car is empty, but it is even worse, it is even more so when the clients decide to become an issue. I was within my first few months of driving when I got a call from my boss. You want a last minute booking for a birthday party? Sure, sounds fun. I copied down the details of the client's address and their destination. I got dressed and drove over to the storage garage to pick up my car for the day, which happened to be a 12-passenger Lincoln. My boss, never gave me details of how many people would be in the car, and the passenger capacity of the vehicle only gives a slight clue. I have driven many high occupancy vehicles just for people. I arrived at the client's home and backed into the driveway. I already knew I was in a heap load of trouble when 13, 9, and 10-year-old kids ambushed the car and started knocking and rocking it while screaming, "We get to ride in a limo?" A very disheveled and tired-looking woman, I assumed to be the mother of the birthday boy, walked out of the house through the garage door. "Boys, get over here and do not touch the car. Stand in line and I will go over the rules with you." I got out of the car. "Hello, ma'am. I'm Lionel, and I will be your driver for the day. I'm Sarah, and I will be with you in just a second. Take your time. You boys will behave yourselves and will not touch anything in the car except for the seat and seat belts. Do you understand me?" Sarah said as she established herself as the boss to the boys. "Sorry, Lionel. I got myself in over my head with this bunch. About 4 of these heathens need to be on Ritalin. Unfortunately, those 4 are all brothers. The rest of them just had too much cake. Your boss said that you only had 12-passenger car available, but we should be able to fit in the car since the boys are smaller. We all just won't have seatbelts. Is that all right with you?" "If the boss says it's okay, then it's okay with me," I said reluctantly. If I were to get into an accident, I would be held liable for every child in the car, and if 3 of them weren't wearing seatbelts and got injured, I could end up in jail. Thankfully, we were only driving about 5 miles to the bowling alley and then back when they finished bowling one game. The boys filed into the car, and I knew right away Sarah wouldn't be able to handle this bunch by herself. I was surprised when she made it to the bowling alley without any incident. While the group bowled, I read a book and waited to try and avoid going into the bowling alley for any reason. We weren't even. Hi, Stats, how are you? While the group bowled, I read a book and waited to try and avoid going into the bowling alley for any reason. We weren't even at the bowling alley for a half an hour when a very red and very pissed Sarah burst through the doors, pulling a very angry child behind her. The other 12 boys followed and looked very angry. They piled into the car again. "Can you take us to the house, please, Lionel?" "I will indeed, ma'am." Sarah hopped in the car and was anything but happy. "Do you boys have any idea how much you just cost me by smashing that display case? You will never disrespect me like that again. And if I ever decide to invite you out over to our home again," she yelled. It wasn't 30 seconds after she finished yelling when I heard glass breaking in the back. "Why the fuck would you break those glasses like that, you stupid little shit? I've had it with you. Your parents will be getting the bill for everything you broke today." I heard the eerie sound of flesh versus flesh very loudly, followed by a scream from Sarah. Apparently, the child who Sarah yelled at decided that hitting a woman meant nothing. He punched her very hard directly in the eye. I opened my door and ran to the back of the car. As I opened the door, 12 little boys were in a hurry to get out of the car. From the time it took me to exit my door to the time it took me to get to the back door of the car, the child who had hit Sarah had mounted her and was repeatedly punching her in the head and face. I jumped in the car and grabbed the child by his hair. This caused him to scream and try to turn around to punch me. I pulled on his hair harder, and he crumpled to the floor of the car, screaming. During the commotion, Sarah's son had run inside the bowling alley and had them call the police. I pulled the boy who had punched Sarah out of the car and was holding him against the car by his hair and his arms, which I had managed to get behind his back. He wasn't fighting me, but the foulness of his curses was something that should never come out of anyone's mouth, let alone the mouth of a child. The police arrived quickly and apprehended the boy and put me in handcuffs for the safety of the situation. When I explained who I was and what happened, I was quickly released from the handcuffs. An ambulance was called to assess Sarah. She had been beaten severely and needed to go to the hospital. I had gone inside to call my boss to let him know what was going on. He was in utter shock. He quickly drove over to the bowling alley and he was talking to Sarah and the police. Sarah was taken to the hospital and her son rode with her in the ambulance. The child who had beaten Sarah was hauled off to jail, and my boss and I were stuck with the rest of the children. Thankfully, the bowling alley was generous enough to let the children call their parents to come get them. Every parent was more than happy to come get their child or children, except the three brothers of the now jailed delinquent. Their parents refused to come get them because they hadn't given permission for them to go to the bowling alley in a limousine in the first place. The police put the boys in the back of the police car, and they were taken to the police station. I later found out that their parents lost custody of them for many reasons. Sarah recovered from her beating, but she was kept in the hospital for several days because her orbital socket was crushed and she had hemorrhaging from her eyeball. Her jaw had been dislocated and she had to get a lot of stitches to sew together the numerous lacerations to her face. The police found blood on a piece of glass that had been broken in the car, and they believed that the child had cut Sarah with the glass. I visited Sarah in the hospital the day after the incident, and she kept saying that she was so sorry this had happened. I reassured her that it wasn't her fault. She did nothing but cry the entire time I was visiting. Thank you. I left the hospital and stopped by work to get my paycheck since it was payday, and when I got there, my boss pulled me aside and asked me to come to his office. He asked me what happened in the car the day before. I went over the story with him in detail. He just sat back and listened with a stone face. When I finished, he continued to stare at his desk like he was trying to comprehend everything I had just told him. Why did you grab the boy by his hair? Wasn't there an easier way to get him out of the car? Without letting me answer, without letting me answer, I just hope his parents don't sue us for you grabbing him like that. I hope the police don't press charges against you for child abuse, something like that. Son, I'm going to have to let you go. You handle that situation poorly, and I won't be responsible for your actions. I'll have Marge write you another check for your troubles. And with that, I was jobless. The next day I had several limousine and driving companies calling me, offering me a job. They called me a hero for saving Sarah's life. When they asked my former boss why he fired me, he told them I was an asshole who wasn't going to get him sued. He told them I was an asshole who was going to get him sued. The robbery. It was a beautiful evening in the fall. I remember watching the sunset in the distant hills as I drove to my client's house. It wasn't often that I got to drive away from the city to pick up clients. I was driving in the rolling hills of the suburbs and I was looking over my itinerary. I had to pick up my clients, had to drive to three houses to collect their guests, and then drive to an abandoned building where a charity gambling party was taking place. Every year, a charity organization put together a gambling party for the super elite around the area. They would hold the gambling party in different locations every year. The clients will dress to the nines, and they try to impress everyone with their own glamour. Almost everyone takes a limousine or a party bus to the occasion. A few will drive exotic supercars that cost more than 5 working class households' yearly salary. It's a very elaborate excuse for the filthy rich to throw away money and show off at the same time. Only a small fraction of the proceeds actually make it to the charity, but every dime is spent is a tax write-off. Those of us that drive the clients are required to not go inside the building and are required to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Basically, we can't talk about who we may or may not have seen at the event. It was the 5th event I had driven for, so I was used to the procedure. I backed into my client's driveway and they were waiting for me on the porch. I was 15 minutes early, so I was surprised that they were already waiting for me. They hurried into the car as soon as I stopped. I hadn't even gotten a chance to take the car out of gear. I was told to head to the next house as quickly as I could. I proceeded as instructed. My clients almost seemed frantic, but they put on a "we're not worried" smile on their faces. At the second house, I didn't even get a chance to start backing into the driveway when three more people got in the car. They instructed me to the next house. I usually drive with the divider open, but my clients had closed it. I could hear their hushed conversation. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but from what I could tell, it wasn't good. The third house, I managed to back into the driveway. All five of my passengers got out of the car without letting me open the doors for them. They fast walked into the house. I knew that two more people were supposed to be picked up for a total of 7 passengers. When 8 people came out of the house, I wasn't too surprised because clients added guests all of the time. But because I had driven these clients 4 times prior to this, something was amiss. The unexpected guest came out of the house holding the female client from the home extremely close and in an awkward position. While the others were all dressed in tuxedos and full-length ballroom gowns, this man was dressed in a cheap faded blue suit. His tie was badly tied, and I could see the stains on his white shirt. The other clients didn't seem alarmed, but they looked guarded. The young lady who was being escorted introduced the cheap suit guy as her cousin, Victor. Everyone climbed into the car, and I began driving to the event. The divider was open so I could see my clients in the back. There was tension in the air, but nobody said a word during the entire ride. When we arrived at the event, the red carpet officials opened the back doors of the limousine. My clients walked slowly into the event. I thought it was odd, but everything was out of my hands. It was about an hour into the event when things got interesting. All limousines were parked across the street from the warehouse where the event was, and my car was parked directly across from the front door. I was standing at the front of my car, talking with a few other drivers. We were sharing crazy client stories to one up each other. Just as my turn was coming up to tell my highly exaggerated tale, we heard what we thought was a single gunshot. The screams that followed confirmed our initial thought. A few people came running out of the front door, but the door was slammed shut and nobody else escaped the building. The other drivers and I ran to help those that had escaped. One driver got in his car and drove down to the road to the nearest payphone. Yes, I said payphone. This was years before everyone had a cell phone, and we still had to put a quarter in the phone to make a call. Fortunately, 911 is always a free call. It didn't take long for the police to arrive. The people who escaped were the first to be interviewed, while other officers went to every exit of the building to try and gain entry. The exits to the building were all barricaded. At the front door, a hand with a piece of paper was seen coming through the front door when it was open just enough to pass a note to the police. We didn't find out until later, but it was a ransom note. The person holding hostages demanded $1 million to release $1 million to release the hostages. All I could think to myself was, can't you come up with a better number than 1 million? Be original and demand something weird like $1,432,917.28. That would be a lot more respectable than a boring million. The drivers were detained until the police had full control of the situation. We weren't allowed in our cars, and we couldn't leave. We were given the exception to go pee behind one of the vehicles that kept our urinating out of the view of the public. If we had to go number 2, we were to hold it. Thankfully, I didn't have to pee or poop during the whole ordeal. The person on the inside agreed to release some of the hostages after a few hours of negotiation. The front entrance of the building opened, and about 20 people came out. All of them were duct taped at the hands and across their mouths. Each person was taken to a safe location so the duct tape could be removed, and then each person could be questioned. I didn't see any of my clients amongst the released hostages at first, but then I caught a glimpse of Victor, A medic cut his hands free and then removed the tape from across his mouth. The medic asked if he was all right, and he said he was all right. When the medic turned to help another former hostage, Victor quietly walked off unnoticed by anyone but myself. Once he was in the clear, I saw him sprint away. I ran to the nearest police officer to tell him, but I was ignored. When I began to yell that the person who was holding everyone hostage had escaped, a silence fell. Every police officer suddenly wanted to hear what I had to say. I pointed to the direction and told them he ran that way. A dozen or so officers ran in the general direction, but after 45 minutes of searching, they didn't find him. The police forced their way into the building. They found the remaining hostages all duct taped together in groups around different gambling tables. There were over 500 in the building. There were over 500 hostages in the building. Since my clients were with Victor, they were taken to the police department. I was escorted in my limousine to the department as well. My clients were all separated and asked many questions. I was asked how I knew the man. Did I think he was suspicious? Was he armed? I answered honestly. I told them I was only a driver and I only recognized him as he ran. The police had no more use for me after I answered every question with the same reply 100 or so times. I was put in a holding cell for further investigation. My clients were kept in questioning for over 8 hours. They were broken and shaking when I was finally able to take them home. Victor was able to escape with just under $500,000 in cash, several $100,000 in watches and other jewelry, and was found a year and a half later hanging from the underside of a bridge. There is no way he could have carried out a suicide, but his death was ruled as so anyway. As far as my clients, they were originally charged with being accomplices to the robbery. The charges were later dropped when the video footage from a home security camera showed that Victor held the clients from the last stop at gunpoint. He forced them to call their friends and told them to hurry or he would kill the couple. Police action. I had owned my own car for several years at this point. I had moved several times since my time in the military, and I decided to move to a smaller rural town in the middle of the country. Business was good for me because I was the only limousine company in a 60-mile radius. I had 4 other cars at this point, and everything was going great. Well, I thought it was. Oh, don't worry. There's all kinds of situations. It's not all scary. I had scheduled a fare with some clients to drive them around and stop at several locations so they could show some out-of-town friends several tourist locations in the area. We were on the road for a little over an hour when my clients asked me to stop at the next gas station so they could use the facilities. I gladly obliged, and I had to use them as well. I found a gas station in a small town. I parked a limousine on the side of the parking lot so I would be out of the way of the other cars and not interfere with the gas station business. One of the clients went to the bathroom, and I also went. I wasn't in the store long, and I made it back to the car before my client. The other clients had decided to go into the store to purchase a few things, and I waited for them outside of the car so I could open the door for them when they arrived back at the car. I noticed the police car had pulled up and was filling his car with gasoline, but I didn't pay him any attention because it was normal business. One of my clients had come out of the store and came back to the car. I opened the door for her so she could get in. I had no sooner closed the door when the police car pulled around the gas pumps and parked directly behind my limousine. He had parked so close that he almost hit my car. Another police officer sped into the parking lot and parked at the front of my limousine, also almost hitting it. The 2 officers got out of their cars and went inside the gas station. I thought this was rather odd. There were many parking places open in the lot. Why did they block me in? All of my clients came out of the store and were wondering why I was blocked in. I told them I didn't know, but would find out after they were safe in the car. Everyone loaded up, and I went in the store. I found 2 police officers sitting at the table eating. I politely approached them and asked if they could move their cars so I could leave. One of the officers jumped up and got right in my face. Why the fuck should I have to move when you are blocking the whole fucking parking lot with that monstrosity of a car, you piece of shit? I stepped back so I didn't have to smell his chili cheese hot dog breath. I very quietly and politely said, "Well, officer, I'm not blocking the parking lot in any way. I'm actually parked at the side of the parking lot of the closed business next door. You and this fine officer parked at both ends of my limousine and blocked me in. I'm just politely asking you to move so I can get on my way." Oh, Mr. Fucking Big Shot says we're the problem, folks. Can you believe this asshole is causing big trouble in our small, quiet little town by bringing in these loud, obnoxious, rich troublemakers in that big, expensive piece of shit car? I tell you what, asshole. You give me your fucking license and your insurance, and I'll make sure you get what you deserve. I walked away from the officer, and I went back to my car. I could hear the police officer walking behind me. I got out of the car and locked the doors. I told my clients, "I think these police officers are backwoods rednecks, and we had better be prepared for anything." The police officers had drawn their guns and were pointing them at me through my driver's side window. I politely flipped them the middle finger. My client got out of the back of the car, unnoticed by the police officers. He managed to walk up behind them, and I saw him stick the barrel of his gun on the side of the closest police officer's head. The officer dropped his gun instantly. The other officer started screaming, "Put the gun down, you motherfucker! Put the fucking gun down right now, or I swear up to Christ I will shoot you! Put the fucking gun down!" My client politely answered, "Fuck you, you backwards ass redneck motherfucker! I'm FBI. If you don't put your gun down, I will blast the head off this piece of shit," he said as he showed his badge. He then showed the officer whom he had his gun on towards the other officer. He put his own gun away and forcefully walked towards the officer with the badge, shoved it out directly in front of him. When he was half an inch from the other officer's face, he stopped. The officer put his gun away. Both officers huddled together confused. My client put his badge away. "Now move your cars and let us on our way, or I will make sure not even my team will find the pieces of your miserable bodies. Do you get what I'm saying, sweetheart? Or do I have to spell it out for you?" Both officers ran to their cars and sped away. I just sat in the car about to shit my pants at what had just happened. My clients opened the door and said, "I gotta pee. You want a soda from the store?" I just nodded. Of course, at this point, half the town had witnessed the scene. My clients walked through the crowd into the store. I guess he used the restroom and was getting a drink when he was chased out of the store by several angry people. The next thing I knew, that my car was being pelted by hot dogs, nachos, donuts, soda bottles, beer bottles, and many other things. As my client dove in the back of the car, I peeled out, squealing my tires a few hundred feet just to get away. I will admit that I was doing well over 100 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone to get away from this jealous mob. I blew two traffic lights in the town, finally slowed down when I no longer saw headlights in my rearview mirror following us. When I asked my client what happened in the store, he said he accidentally bumped someone with the door to the cooler. The person he bumped called him a rich asshole and wanted to fight. Moral of the story, I never did get my soda. The do's and don'ts. Ignore the indiscretions. I was still in my military days of driving. I was placed in charge of driving all the VIP clients, military officials, and dignitaries whenever they needed to go at any time, day or night. It was these duties that almost got me in a lot of trouble. As a member of the U.S. Army enlisted force, I didn't get paid a lot. I had decided to take on a part-time job during the hours I knew I wouldn't be working unless it was a special assignment. Since I knew how to drive and because I owned a what the heck just happened? There we go. I own my own vehicle. I took a job as a delivery person for the base florist. Whenever someone bought flowers, balloons, or a mixture of both, I was the person who got to deliver them. I had the honor of delivering many arrangements to the parents of newborn children at the base hospital, as well as the civilian hospital. This was an amazing experience for me. I'm an what? What? Hang on. Okay, that's what. Why? I accidentally misspelled something. Okay, was an amazing experience for me because I only had one sister, and I didn't get to experience the birth of anyone's child. My parents were both recluses, and none of my relatives invited my family over for these special occasions. I was at the hospital, and I had 7 different families to deliver flowers and balloons to. With every delivery, I was hugged, kissed, and held, and given a cigar to commemorate the birth of every child. I, to this day, still have every cigar I was ever given. Each one bears "It's a girl" or "It's a boy." Since I have never smoked anything in my life and the fact that they were special memories, I never got rid of any of them. I had delivered the first 6 of my deliveries at that time. The last had given me some pizza, but the 7th delivery was extra special. The general of the base was the proud father of his 5th child. Every officer on the base and many non-commissioned officers donated money to buy the general and his wife an ungodly number of flowers and balloons. I was thankful that I had a Suburban and it was big enough to haul the enormous arrangement. I had left the arrangement in my SUV because I couldn't carry it with the rest of the deliveries. I knocked on the door after presenting my ID to the guards on duty. I was called into the room. There stood the general himself. He was new to the base, and I had only seen him during the ceremony of his new command. I had never officially met him, and most people never met the families of the base general unless they are other officers. Me being a tiny notch at the bottom of the totem pole, it was I was in awe amongst his presence. His wife was laying in the bed holding their new daughter. I only knew she was a girl by the pink blanket and hat, not to mention that 40 of the 100 balloons said "It's a girl." The general smiled at me with the smile of a proud father. He introduced me to the he instructed me to put the enormous arrangement on the side table. When I put it nicely in its place, the general came to me and gave me a very long, tight bear hug. I was frozen. I didn't know what to do. I was confused and I forgot how to make my limbs function properly. I finally realized what was happening and hugged him back. His embrace became tighter. I loosened my grip and he finally released me. I was able to breathe again. I hadn't noticed that he had hugged me so tightly that I stopped breathing until the moment he released me. Isn't she beautiful? My first girl out of 5. I'm so happy. My wife doubted me, but I told her it was going to be a girl this time. Right, honey? His wife gave him a look of annoyance, but then, "Yes, dear, you called it." I was about to make my exit when the general put his arms around my back, put his arm around the small of my back. Just look at the two of them. Is there anything more beautiful than that? Of course, I knew this was a rhetorical question, but I uttered, "No, sir, there is nothing more beautiful." I managed to step away from his one-armed embrace and head towards the door. "Congratulations, sir, ma'am." I then stepped out the door and left. I couldn't quite put my finger on why I felt so awkward and uncomfortable around the general, but I knew it wasn't because he was my superior. I just felt weird. A few days had gone by, and I noticed I had a delivery of a dozen roses to the general's house. He had ordered a dozen roses to be delivered to his wife. I found out later that this was a weekly delivery. Every Friday at precisely 1430 hours, I was to deliver a dozen red roses to the general's wife. It was about 2 months into the general's command that I was given a special assignment. I was to drive the general around whenever he needed me. Fortunately, I was still able to keep my flower delivery job. That was one job I truly enjoyed. Anyways, I was given the command to drive the general whenever his heart desired, wherever he desired. I had just finished my flower delivery shift when I was called upon to get into uniform and pick up the general in the stretch limousine. It was a Friday evening, and it was typical that high-ranking officers took their wives out for special occasions. I pulled up to the general's house, and I was surprised that he came out of the house unaccompanied by his wife. He was dressed in a civilian suit, and he was alone. I opened the door for him, and he instantly recognized me. So, you deliver flowers and people? Aye, my boy. Yes, sir. I am now your permanent driver. Your last driver was reassigned to another base. Well, isn't that something? Well, or where would you like to go, sir? There's this little place I like to go, but I don't want to go there in this obvious military vehicle. Is there any way we can exchange it for your personal car? I'll pay for your gas and all of that. I just don't want to be recognized where we are going. Some people might get the wrong idea. Know what I mean, son? I do indeed, sir, but I'm assigned this vehicle. If it's found without me driving it, I could get into a lot of trouble. The car is assigned for your protection, sir. My vehicle isn't suited for that. Well, drive to the motor pool and I'll make it all right. Yes, sir. I drove back to the motor pool and I let the general out of the back of the car. He told me to wait where I was and he would be right back. He entered the building. A few minutes later, my commanding officer came out with the general. I was instructed to put the car in the garage and take the general anywhere he wanted in my personal vehicle. I was given a credit card to cover my gasoline. Any other fees that might be acquired would be covered by the general. When we got to my Suburban, the general was impressed. He complimented the customizations I had done to it. He got into the front passenger seat on his own. I got in the driver's seat. Where are we headed, sir? You know that little club over there in the next town? I think I want to go there. Which club is that, sir? There are several over in Centerville. You know which club. You know the GAY club. I didn't know why he insisted on spelling gay at the time. He At the same time he whispered it, but I obliged. As I drove the 45 minutes to Centerville, the general made light chit-chat about my duties as a flower delivery driver and as a driver for the military VIP. I gave simple answers, but he was satisfied with my answers and didn't push. We arrived at the local gay club, and in bold letters on the display sign, we were told that it was live singing diva drag race. I had no idea, I had no clue what this meant, but I assumed the general did because he was very excited when he read the sign. Now, when we get inside, you just call me Carl, no matter what. Do not call me sir or general. I know it's not normal for enlisted soldiers to call his superior by his first name, but I'm trying to remain discreet in here. Got it? Yes, sir. I mean, Carl. Yes, Carl. I understand. With that, Carl slapped his arm over my shoulder and we went inside. He covered the $10 cover charge for me and offered to buy me a drink. I thanked him and ordered soda since I was driving and because I had never consumed alcohol even to this day. Carl was no longer the man I met in the hospital. His spirit changed into something I could never have imagined. I had never really been around or known anyone who was openly homosexual or bisexual until this moment in my life. Let's just say that this wasn't the case for Carl. He seemed to know everyone in the bar. I wasn't uncomfortable in any way because I'm very comfortable with myself. I was sitting at the bar just watching the people around me. Quite a few men and women greeted me, and a few of the men even hit on me. When they realized I wasn't gay, they just talked with me. Many of the other men and women who talked to me wondered if I was curious about their culture. I'm actually just designated driver for my friend. He likes to come here and drink, and he doesn't want to get a DUI or kill anybody if he drinks and drives. Everyone was satisfied with my answer. I will say that my first experience in a gay bar was one of the best nights I have ever had. Everyone was beyond friendly, and I didn't have to pay for a single soda that night. Even though my parents always told me that gay people were perverts and that every one of them was going to hell for their wrongdoings, I learned at a very early age to ignore my parents' hatred towards people, and I have never judged anyone in my life. I have never hated anyone in my life either. People are who they are, and I respect everyone for who they are. Carl was out on the dance floor dancing with a man. This man was in full drag, and I will say he was very beautiful. Carl motioned for me to come out and join him. I was very hesitant, but a group of ladies sitting near me scooped me up and took me to the dance floor. I danced with four beautiful ladies until the show started. Yes, There were women. Yes, they were women. Okay. The show started and Carl was overexcited. I didn't know if he was inebriated or horny at the time. I think it was actually both. The performers each did a load of show where they lip synced a song. After each performance, the performers accepted tips. Carl was eager to give each one of them $100 bill. There were 15 performers. Carl spent a lot of money that night. Whoa, come on, Robert. Clicked the wrong thing again. When I was finally able to drag Carl out of the bar, it was closing time. All the bars in the area closed at 2 a.m., and Carl was bound and determined to close the bar down. During the ride back to base, Carl slept. Just before we got back Just before we got to base, Carl instructed me to drive to the gas station and fill up gas. I did as I was instructed. Carl went into the store to use the bathroom. I was amazed as to how fast he sobered up or appeared to be sober. After he came out of the store, he told me to drive to the motor pool and pick up the limousine. We parked my SUV and got into the limousine. One of the other soldiers on duty opened the garage door for me, and I drove the general home. When we got to his house, he very seriously said, "You mention this to anybody? If you mention this to nobody. If they ask, I was at an official meeting with several other officers. Understand?" "Yes, sir. I understand completely." The general went into his house, and I drove back to the motor pool. Every Friday for the next few months, I delivered flowers to the general's wife, and then picked the general up in the limousine that evening. Then Carl and I went to the gay bar, where he partied like a teenager. I was about 4 months into our routine when things went sour. When the bar closed, I had to drag Carl out of the bar to get him into the Suburban. Tonight, Carl didn't want to come home alone. He insisted that I give a ride to his friend also. Being the obedient soldier I am, I agreed to give his companion a ride. Carl and his companion sat in the back seat. I saw both of them slump down into the seat, so I assumed they had fallen asleep. It was about 15 minutes into the ride home, and I heard what they were really doing. I couldn't see anything they were doing, but I could hear everything. I decided to ignore it and turn my stereo up so I wouldn't have to listen to them giving each other a blowjob. It was shortly after I turned up my music when I saw movement in the back seat. Carl was sitting on his knees and turned sideways in the seat. Seconds later, Carl yells in ecstasy, "Yes, you bitch! Take it in the ass, you bitch! Let me fuck you hard!" The rest of the ride home is a complete blank to me. I was so utterly shocked and disgusted that I can't remember anything about the night except when I dropped the general off at his house. When he went inside, I opened the car door and vomited on the street. The next day, I asked my supervising officer to be reassigned due to conflict of interest. He asked me what the conflict was, and I told him, "Sir, I deliver flowers to the general's wife every Friday, and she and I have become friends. I don't think it's appropriate for me to continue to drive the general around when I have come to be friends with his wife." A week later, I was sent to another base per the general's orders to finish out my last 6 months of service in the Army. I had decided not to re-enlist my services. Hi, Anna. How are you? Do not partake. When you're driving around a group of clients, never partake in activities. I took a last-minute bachelorette party booking for the same night as the booking. I had just bought my limousine and started my own business, so I was trying to get as many jobs as possible to grow my clients and business. This particular job was driving a group of 8 young ladies so they could bar hop to celebrate the last night of being single for a future bride. I arrived at the client's hotel to pick the group of ladies up for their journey. I was noticed before my car even got into the parking lot. All the young ladies ran to the car to greet me. They were so excited that each one had to hug me and take a picture with me in the car. Most of the ladies were scantily dressed because they hadn't gotten ready for the night yet. I waited in the parking lot of the hotel for over an hour while the ladies got ready for the night. Finally, the ladies were loaded into the car, and we were on our way to our first destination. The music was loud, and the girls were even louder. Between their singing and loud talking, I barely noticed the actual music that was playing at full volume on the stereo. We arrived at our first destination, and I had to double park the limousine to let the ladies out of the car. They told me to park the car and come in with them, but I had to decline because the neighborhood wasn't the greatest and I didn't want my car to get stolen or vandalized. They weren't happy with me, but they accepted my answer and went inside. I was able to find parking when two cars parked in front of one another decided to leave at the same time. I had to back up the car in the middle of the road to let them out, but traffic was non existent, so it was easy. When the cars moved, I easily parallel parked the limousine directly in front of the bar. A few of the ladies kept coming out to the car to check on me and insisted I come in the bar. I declined every time. That didn't make them happy, and they pretended to pout and tried to lure me in. It didn't work. It didn't take long for the ladies to get bored with the first bar, so we moved on to the next one. The bar was quite elite. They had special parking for limousines, and all drivers were given free entry to the club and free sodas. I went into the club after I parked the limousine and I found a place at the bar close to the entrance so I could see if my clients were ready to leave. It didn't take long for three of my clients to notice me at the bar. This was the turning point of the entire rest of the night. The three ladies glided up to me, acting devilishly innocent. I could tell by the looks on their faces they were what they had in mind for me. Two of the young ladies stood on either side of me and wrapped their arms around me. The third graciously sat directly in my lap. I wouldn't have minded it terribly if she hadn't sat on my lap facing me, her legs straddling each side of me. It was comfortable but awkward at the same time. It became interesting when she decided to slide back and forth on me, making sure to press herself on certain parts of my lap firmly. Me being the professional I was, I just sat and smiled at her. I didn't want her to see the overexcitement I was feeling inside, and I definitely didn't want her to notice the enormous boner she was giving me. I was able to play it cool. She didn't notice it, or at least I don't think she did. Who am I kidding? Of course she noticed. How do you not notice when a man has an erection when you are sitting directly on his penis? At this point, I was still holding it together. It wasn't until she leaned in and kissed me deep and hard that I knew I was taken. I was her slave for the rest of the night. Well, I was bounced between the three of the ladies. The remaining four and the bride to be were very tame compared to these three. At the at every club we danced, I was led around easily. When the other seven weren't paying attention, my captor led me to the car and did things to me nobody had ever done to me before that point in my life or since. She was like a drug. I couldn't get enough of her. We were discreet for the most part around the others, but when she had me alone, we took full advantage. The night was amazing. When I dropped the ladies back off at the hotel, there were several gentlemen waiting for their arrival. I opened the door to let the ladies out of the car. When my captor got out, she gave me a hug and a kiss on the cheek. When she walked away, she looked back and winked. I closed the door to the car and started to walk around the back of the car to get back to the driver's seat. The gentlemen who had been waiting had finished greeting the ladies and were now following me. I was stopped in my tracks when one of them said, "Hey, driver, did you have sex with my wife?" I instantly knew that I was in the middle of an oh shit moment. I turned around. "Excuse me? I didn't hear your question. Did you have sex with my wife?" The man stood a good foot taller than me. He had a really large build, and I could see the veins in his forehead and neck pulsating. I was scared shitless. I very politely answered, "No, sir, I did not have sex with your wife or with anyone tonight." "Are you sure? Because if you did, you won't live to see another minute." "Yes, sir. I can honestly say I did not have sex with your wife tonight." "Well, you better hope you aren't lying to me, because if you are, I will hunt you down and kill you." "I'm very sure. Have a great rest of your day." I turned on my heels and got into the car and drove away as quickly as I could. I was shaking so bad I thought I was going to crash my car. I can say that I was completely honest with the gentleman. I did not have sex with his wife. Sex would have implied a beautiful romantic scenario where we tenderly and graciously enjoyed intimacy with each other. That did not happen that night. What happened was she fucked my brains out like nobody had ever or ever has since. It wasn't sex at all. It was an intense rawness of pure, unadulterated, no holds bar fuck fest. This was the only time I ever enjoyed my clients and their activities, and the only time I had ever had sex with a client. Well, that isn't wholly true, but we will talk about that later. Always be kind. It doesn't take much to be kind to clients or anyone for that matter. All of the years I had been driving a limousine up to this point in my life, I always treat clients like royalty. They pay my paycheck and they are the reason I'm in business. I've had rude clients, clients that are bitchy, and clients that are just pure assholes. No matter how bad they treat me, I killed them with kindness. It was around 3 a.m. on a Sunday. I remember this clearly because it was my birthday. There was a wetness to the air. It wasn't quite a drizzle in the air, and it was well more than a thick fog. The air was just wet. Snow had fallen the previous day, but it was such a light dusting that it had already melted, despite the fact that it was January. I was driving a 30-passenger party bus to pick up my clients. The destination was a football game over 6 hours away. The clients booked for a full 12 hours, but knew that if they didn't use the full time of booking, he wouldn't be getting a refund. He agreed to the terms of the contract. All bookings were charged 24 hours before the scheduled pickup in order to confirm payment. I learned early from my previous employment that too many people skimp out on payments or credit cards are declined. The client's credit card went through without a problem. I pulled up to the client's house and I backed down the driveway. The client was already on the front porch, and he already looked like he hadn't had enough coffee. When I stepped out of the bus, the client approached me and said, "Why the hell are you so late? You were supposed to be here 30 minutes early." "Sir, I'm only required to arrive at least 10 minutes before the scheduled time. I'm 25 minutes early. If you like, I can leave and come back in 10 minutes per the contract." "Don't be a smartass. I'll make sure you get fired from your job if you keep your shit up." He was kind enough to muffle the asshole under his breath. If you feel the necessity to try and have me fired, sir, that's your choice. I will have to do my best to make you enjoy your trip from to and from your destination. "You're damn right you will." The client got into the bus. "Where's the bathroom?" "This bus doesn't have a bathroom, sir. If you need to use the restroom along the way, I will find somewhere to stop." "I asked for a bus with a bathroom. This is bullshit. Go get another bus with the bathroom." "Sir, we don't have any party buses with bathrooms. I can guarantee you were told that if you had asked." "You don't know shit about what I did and didn't ask about. Stop being a twit. Where's the alcohol?" "We don't provide alcohol for any party bus rentals." "I have the contract right here. It says alcohol will be provided. Right here, you see that? You see the print? It says alcohol will be provided." I took the contract from him. I already knew what it says because I wrote the contract myself since I own my business. My secretary is the one who had dealt with when he came into the office. She told me that he was a bit of a jerk when he booked the rental, so I was expecting it to be a rough day. "What the contract says, sir, is that alcohol will be provided at an extra expense to the contract if requested by the customer in advance. Then it says that only water will be provided at no expense and limited to 3 water bottles per customer writing." "You're making that up. Give me the contract. Where does it say that?" I was kind enough to point out where it stated on the contract. This infuriated the client more. "What kind of shit show is this company running? I get told one thing when I rent the fucking bus, and then I get something else when the bus arrives." "Sir, I assure you that what is in the contract is what you were told. If you would like, we can stop along the way and you and your party can purchase all the alcohol you want." "Is your company going to pay for the alcohol?" "No, sir, we do not provide alcohol." "This is ridiculous. I should just cancel this stupid bus and hire someone else. I'll show you when your boss has to refund me." "Sir, if you notice in the contract, I believe it's on page 7, any rental canceled between 24 hours and 12 hours will only receive a 50% refund. Any cancellations within 12 hours will not be given a refund. Yeah, you tell that to the court when I sue your stupid ass. Are we going to be going to other locations to pick up the rest of your party, or will they be meeting us here? You'll do what I tell you to do, is what is going to happen. That's fine, sir, but I'll need to know if I'm going to any other locations. Just shut up so I can think. I decided it best to get into the driver's seat and wait this guy out. The client has already pissed me off to the point that I just wanted to cancel the job and give him a refund. If I didn't have to worry about making payments on the party bus, I would have. This is the only vehicle I've ever financed, and they don't rent often enough to cancel out a 24-hour job. I just sit in the seat and drink my coffee until the client speaks up again. Hey, asshole, are you going to help me load this cooler, or are you just going to sit on your ass? Sir, I'm not required to assist you load or unload personal belongings. Get off your ass and help me, or I'll make sure you get fired right now and have your boss get someone else to drive this piece of shit. No, sir, I will not be able to help you load and unload your personal belonging. It's in the contract and against insurance policy. That's it. I'm calling your boss and make sure you get fired. You just fucked up big time. The client grabbed his cell phone and begins dialing. I hadn't noticed until this point that he was wobbling. He was drunk and we hadn't even started our day out yet. I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket, but I decided not to answer, hoping that it would deter him from calling again. Well, I calculated that one wrong. The client hung up and immediately dialed again. My phone rang. Living your dream limousine. How may I help you? The client hadn't noticed that I was the one who answered. When he was on his porch, he couldn't see me. You need to fire the motherfucker you got driving this party bus for me and get someone else here immediately. This piece of shit won't get off his ass and help me with anything. Well, sir, I do apologize, but we aren't allowed to help clients load or unload personal belongings. We also don't have another driver available, and I'm driving a client for the next 24 hours. What the fuck? So you mean I'm stuck with this fucktard for the rest of this trip? Jesus Christ, you people are a piece of shit company, and I'll make sure you get shut down and sued. Well, sir, if you feel that way, I'll go ahead and consider this a cancellation and instruct my driver to leave immediately. We don't respond well to threats. You ain't canceling shit unless I get a refund. Sir, you need to calm down and enjoy your day. I will not allow my company to be threatened, and I definitely will not allow my drivers to be threatened. Do you understand? If not, this rental will get canceled. The police will be notified, and I will not give you a refund since my driver and party bus have already been dispatched. Is that clear? Are you fucking kidding me? Why the fuck am I talking to you? He came to the party bus and noticed me talking to him on the phone. I hung up the phone. Well, sir, are you talking to me because I'm the owner of the company? I will not tolerate any more threats or rudeness from you, or I will cancel this job. The fuck you will? I stepped out of my driver's seat. I entered the back of the bus. I took the 2 coolers off the bus that the customer had already loaded, and then I shut the door from the inside. I climbed into the driver's seat and drove away. The customer attempted to step in front of the bus, but I had floored the gas pedal, and he was smart enough to step away. It didn't take long for my phone to start ringing. I noticed it was the client. I let the several calls go to voicemail before I decided to listen to them. The client's wife had called. She apologized for her husband's actions. She asked me kindly to call her back. I pulled over the bus and called her back. I had only gone a few miles down the road. Hello, this is Living Your Dreams Limousine. I'm calling back as requested. Hello, sir. I'm sorry for my husband's actions this morning. Would you be kind enough to return and pick up the party for the rest of the day? My husband will not be joining us. He is, well, we'll just say he's sleeping off his bad mood. Ma'am, I'm more than happy to come back if you promise that nobody will behave the way your husband did. Sir, I can guarantee it. I'll see you in 5 minutes. I arrived back at the client's house and was still there 10 minutes prior to the scheduled time. There were 27 people waiting as I backed into the driveway. I didn't know where they came from, but not a single car passed me on the road. There he is. Hey, buddy, glad to see you this morning. How are you? This came from a large bearded man. He had the biggest smile on his face. I heard you Tell that asshole brother of mine that you weren't going to take a shit. Good for you. He's had a stick up his asshole since the day he discovered his dick was smaller than his IQ, and he is one dumb motherfucker. Ha 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 ha. I couldn't help but chuckle at that. The rest of the clients loaded coolers, food, blankets, and pillows onto the bus. All were smiling and very grateful to see me. A woman I assumed to be the wife who called me embraced me with a hug just before she stepped onto the bus. The rest of the trip was long, but everything went perfectly. I was offered a ticket to the game since one person didn't make the trip, but I gracefully declined. We already know what happened the last time I hung out with clients. We made it to the game home. We made it to the game and home. We made it back with a half hour to spare. 23 and a half hours is a long time to drive. It's also against regulations, but we won't get into that. My clients were so grateful of my service for the time we spent together that they tipped me another $3,000 on top of the gratuity already added to the fare. Aside from the first client I had to deal with, the rest of the group was the friendliest and nicest bunch of people I could have ever met. They booked many other engagements with me, and even the asshole showed up and was nice to me. And we're going to call it at that. So that's the first section of the book. We will get to the next one tomorrow. So at 11 a.m., make sure you log in, and we'll see you then. Thanks for watching.